The UFC 309 pre-fight press conference just ended, and boy, was it a crazy press conference. You had Jon Jones, Stipe Miocic, Charles Oliveira, Michael Chandler, Bo Nickal, and Paul Craig, and Dana White. And it was the craziest press conference I have ever seen in my entire life. I'm kidding. It wasn't really that notable. We're going to go through all the notable moments in this video. And I'll tell you this right now. This is my biggest takeaway from the press conference. There is potentially a fallout brewing between Dana White and Jon Jones, because you can already see the seeds being sown in the media and with the fans and with Dana White of an attempt to try to bully Jon Jones into taking that Tom Aspinall fight if he does in fact beat Stipe Miocic at UFC 309. Now we're going to take a look at a couple different clips from the press conference, and we're going to talk about that more a little bit later. But I thought that was the most interesting moment. And also, I thought Jon Jones was trying a little bit too hard to make it personal with Stipe Miocic. I really didn't like the stare down with him and Stipe. I know that sounds crazy. I'm judging a stare down. We're going to take a look at that. And I just want to talk about it because I don't feel like anybody else has really talked about that too much. And also, we got an answer about the gloves from Dana White. We're going to discuss that. We'll look at the clip for that as well. And yeah, this wasn't a great press conference, but the main takeaway is that fallout brewing between Dana White and Jon Jones. So let's start off and talk about basically the nothingness of the press conference that was Bo Nickal and Paul Craig. So essentially, Bo Nickal was asked about something Paul Craig had said, and Bo Nickal said, I got 100 different ways to beat him, and Paul Craig responded and said, I only need one way to beat him, and that's a triangle choke, and said a couple different things. And Bo Nickal said he went for the low-hanging fruit. He said, did anybody even understand a single word he was saying? I mean, is that not the oldest comeback in the book at this point? And then he kind of backtracks a little bit. He just sounded like a cornball. He's like, but yeah, but I think you got a slick accent, bro. That wasn't his exact quote, but he kind of was shitty to him, and then was like, oh, I really like your accent, man. Just seemed like a complete and utter cornball. And that was the really only notable exchange for Paul Craig and Bo Nickal. Bo Nickal was also asked about Donald Trump attending. He said no comment, but Saturday's going to be a special night. And that's pretty much it for Bo Nickal and Paul Craig. Nobody gives a rat's ass about Bo Nickal and Paul Craig. Now, for the co-main event, there wasn't really anything crazy. Chandler got booed out of the arena to begin with. Charles Oliveira, obviously a fan favorite. Chandler kind of tried to turn the crowd on his side, but he was like, look, if anybody doesn't like Charles Oliveira, they can kick rocks. And it was just like, I kind of felt bad for Chandler. And when they announced him to come out, they were like, the most explosive, entertaining fighter returning after a 2-year layoff. And I was like, oh, God. But yeah, Chandler basically kind of hyped up Oliveira. He tried to put multiple kind of, clips out there. This is a #1 contender fight. I'll be fighting for a title after this. I'm going to be the #1 contender. Charles was asked about, he wants to become a champion again, and he has a new son. And Charles kind of hyped up the crowd a little bit because the crowd was clearly on his side, but it didn't translate as well because, obviously Charles Oliveira is going through a translator. Chandler was asked about 170, and he says, I'm focused on winning a 155-pound belt. Chandler was asked about the quitter remarks, and he kind of backtracked on that a little bit, but I felt like the way the guy phrased it was kind of a little bit egregious, based on what Chandler was actually saying. So I felt like it was a little egregious. And that was pretty much it for that. I mean, I'm drawing a blank for anything else that was super notable outside of Chandler talking a little bit of crap about McGregor. But when we get to the clips later in the video, that'll be the first clip we'll take a look at, because that was kind of like the least of the notable clips that we're going to take a look at in this video. So for the main event, that's really what you guys care about. Jon Jones, Stipe Miocic. So Jon Jones was getting cheered. He was happy to be in New York. Obviously, New York is his home state. He's from upstate New York. And what I took away from Jones at this press conference, it seemed like he was trying to make it personal with Stipe. And Stipe just was looking confused and like what's going on? Oh, by the way, I just remember this. Charles looked a little bit sucked in. It's nothing crazy. He didn't look like death, but he did look a little bit sucked in from the weight cut. Charles is known. There's that picture, I think, of him in Abu Dhabi right before he fought Islam. Or maybe it was before he fought Gaethje. I think it was before he fought Islam, where he looked really crazy. There's that backstage picture of him cutting weight. That's not a great sign, but Charles always kind of looks like that. But back to the main event. It seemed like Jones was desperate to make this personal because Stipe in the embeddeds, or I believe it was the countdowns, when Jones called him out in front of a crowd, Stipe said, "Bring it on, bitch." And recently Jones was like, "Yeah, he called me a bitch. I don't like the disrespect." And it's just corny. It's just corny. Stipe even apologized. He said, "Oh, it was the heat of the moment." And Jones said at the press conference, right? He basically said that it's personal. He called me a bitch, and he also said something about my kids. Now, I have not heard this thing about Jones saying he talked about my kids or whatnot. Stipe looks like absolutely shocked and confused, can't figure out what's going on. And then the guy asked Stipe, "Well, Stipe, do you want to apologize for anything you said?" And he said, well, he said he was going to beat my ass in front of millions of people, and I just defended myself. Sorry for defending myself. And then basically, he didn't remember anything about the kids thing. There was something going on in the face-off. We'll talk about that a little bit later. And Jones says this fight's personal. Like, it's like he's trying to drum up this personal beef with Stipe Miocic that really isn't there. I mean, it's like Jon Jones, he called me a bitch and he talked about my kids. And then Stipe's like, I apologize. Sorry. That's it. I mean, there's no even later in the press conference, Jones says, "Oh, I have nothing but respect for Stipe." So I'm like, so which is it? It's very, very, very confusing. And basically Stipe just looks confused the entire press conference. One thing that I don't think a lot of people picked up on, Stipe was asked, "Stipe, you're very confident you're going to win this fight. Obviously, if Jones loses that fight, it'll be his first ever real loss. Do you intend on giving him an immediate rematch?" And Stipe just says, "Oh, I'm focused on Saturday night." And that's something a lot of people aren't talking about. If Stipe wins this fight, people are praying, "Oh, Stipe can win and it'll be hilarious and it'll all be funny and Jones will lose." They will run that back. Mark my words, they will run it back. Because Stipe is going to get a fat paycheck, fatter than this paycheck, and Jones is going to want to get that loss back. So you're talking about Jones holding up the division. And to be honest, if Stipe beats Jones, I can't lie. I think Jones does deserve a rematch. I know a lot of people aren't going to be happy to hear that, but that's fact. So I thought that was interesting. The guy who Jones refused to do an interview with asked him something along the lines of, "If this is your retirement fight, how do you want to be remembered? It doesn't seem, you may not fight again after this." And basically Jones said, "I came, I saw, I conquered." Jones was asked about burying the hatchet with DC. And he says, "Every time I see DC, I smile and I give him a handshake." But apparently he doesn't like that. Stipe was asked about the odds. And Stipe goes, "Vegas always hated me and they never liked me and I don't care." And the only other notable thing before we really get to the clips is Jones put Dana on the spot. Apparently he brought this, I think it was a young boy. I'm not really 100% sure. But apparently it's a cancer patient, right? And Jones said, "Dana, I got, so-and-so with me. I forgot what his name is. Can we get him tickets? And can we get him good tickets?" And Dana's like nodding his head. Like what is Dana going to say? No? He's going to say, no, fuck that kid. I mean, could you imagine that? So Dana commits to giving him tickets. And then, there's a moment at the press conference for Jones where somebody asked Dana, who's the pound for pound GOAT? Which, first off, you're conflating two different things, but obviously they just wanted to throw that kind of layup or that, that softball for Dana to go, "This guy right here is the pound for pound GOAT," and blah, 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 blah. And that's what Dana did. And Jones starts standing up and flexing. Stipe's asked, "How do you feel about Dana White singing Jones's praises?" And Stipe's like, "I agree with him. He is the GOAT. People call him the GOAT." Stipe couldn't have been more respectful. It felt like Jones was trying to almost manufacture a personal beef with Stipe Miocic 48 hours from the fight. Now, I don't know if that's to take the heat off the Aspinall stuff, because the Aspinall stuff was very, very interesting. Because if you haven't been hiding under a rock, Jones has been asked about Aspinall all week long. And Jones has said, "I'm not really interested in fighting Aspinall, but I'd like to fight Alex Pereira." Well, Dana White was asked about that, and Dana White confirmed, and we're going to look at the clip here in a second, that, the winner of this fight should fight Tom Aspinall. And the crowd goes wild. The crowd starts chanting. I believe it was Tommy, something along those lines. Again, we're going to look at the clip in a second. But that was the most interesting moment for really Jones. And then you have Dana White. We'll go over a couple Dana White moments before we get into the actual clips. Dana White was asked about the UK card that was announced for March. He says he has no fights on that. I already talked about, Dana was asked, who's the pound for pound number one and the pound for pound best? Obviously, he went with Jon Jones. Was asked about 12-6 elbows and getting that loss removed from Jones's record. He says it doesn't look like that's going to happen. And that doesn't really make sense. It was illegal at the time, regardless of the legitimacy of the rule. It was illegal at the time. How are you going to overturn it? And then also, he was asked, you have Ilia Topuria, you have Merab Dvalishvili, you have 2 Georgian champions. Are you going to go to Georgia, I think is how you say it. And Dana White said absolutely, or yes, or something. He committed to going there. I don't know when that's going to happen, but Dana is always talking about going to different locations. South Africa, China, half the time it doesn't ever happen. Now let's get into the clips, okay? That's the gist of it. I don't think I forgot anything with Jones Stipe. Crowd was going wild for the Tom Aspinall. Yeah, that's basically it. He was asked about his corner as well, and he says he has a great corner. Okay, let's jump into the clips. We're going to start off with Michael Chandler actually throwing a little bit of shade at Conor McGregor, which shocked me. So I figured, you know what? Let me include that in this video. Here we go.
I've got absolutely no message for Conor McGregor. I'm 100% focused on Charles Oliveira. Conor McGregor can't get his house in order long enough to figure out how to string together a training camp to show up to the UFC octagon and do what guys like I and Charles Oliveira do multiple times a year. So he can enjoy it from wherever he's enjoying it from. We'll keep the octagon warm while he's out.
Why isn't he should have been saying this a year ago when he was fighting. He should have been fighting a year ago and he should have been saying this. Dude can't even get a training camp together. He's too busy on a yacht partying out, graping up a storm, snorting coke, drinking nonstop. This is what he should have been saying. If he would have said, I have a message for Conor, I'm going to send a message to Conor on Saturday night. Get your candy ass back in the cage so I can eat it. I would have thrown up watching this. So good on Chandler for actually throwing a little bit of shade, but obviously he's focused on Oliveira. Next clip we're going to take a look at is actually Dana White. We're not going in chronological order here, but he's asked about UFC 310. As you guys know, Bilal Muhammad had to pull out with a bone infection. So UFC 310's left without a main event. Let's hear what Dana White has to say.
I know a lot of focus on this pay-per-view, but UFC 310, after Bilal Muhammad pulled out, people are wondering about the main event, if Shavkat will fight someone else. Is that still a plan, or is Pantoja versus Kai Asakura going to be the main event?
We'll announce tomorrow. It's going to be good.
Okay, thank you. So
they're going to announce on Friday. I'm recording this on Thursday right after the press conference. You'll be seeing this very shortly. By the way, like this video, subscribe to the channel. The rumor is Shavkat Rakhmonov versus Ian Machado Gary for an interim welterweight title. If that is confirmed, I will make a video as soon as the information comes out. What I'm thinking, it's kind of making sense to me right now because Usman was kind of teasing the fight last week on the broadcast. And then today he came out and said, I don't think I have enough time. I think Usman was kind of maybe trying to leverage a massive payday. Maybe the UFC wasn't willing to give into his demands, so they're going to pull Ian Machado Gary from that Tampa card against Joaquin Buckley, put him in against Shavkat Rakhmonov, undefeated versus undefeated interim welterweight title fight. Boom, the card is saved. That's a banger fight. I'll react to it if it becomes real news. Who does Joaquin Buckley end up fighting? Carlos Prates just won a fight against Neil Magny. That would be a banger fight. That'd be a massive fight. Boom, problem solved. Tampa main event saved. UFC 310 main event saved. So there you have from Dana White, supposedly going to be announced on Friday. Hopefully we get that information very soon. Next clip we're going to take a look at. As you guys know, and I haven't been able to make a video about this because there's been so much more going on, Dana White was asked, by the way, look how confused Stipe looks here. Okay, look how, by the way, someone gave him this firefighter hat. He brought it out with him on stage, so that was pretty cool. The New York Fire Department. But anyway, Dana was asked, what's going on with the gloves? You're switching back to the old gloves for this event. What's going on? Here's Dana's response.
Questions for you, Dana. Dana, it seems like the fighters are going to be competing in the old gloves this weekend. Can you tell us why that is?
Because there were a lot of complaints about. We originally created these gloves to stop eye pokes, and we had good intentions with them. They didn't work out. People weren't happy with them, so I actually made the decision. Called our chief operating officer Lawrence and said, I'm switching the gloves. I want new the old gloves back. So,
is it going to be the old gloves moving forward now?
Yes.
Okay. And last one from me.
The new gloves are now the old gloves.
That's massive. That is massive. So here's what I think happened, and hopefully eventually maybe next week I'll make a video on this. I think they're looking at the early data on the finishes. It seems like finishes were down with these new gloves. Eye pokes weren't really curtailed. I don't have the exact data on that, but it didn't seem, anecdotally, it didn't seem like eye pokes were being curtailed. So if it seemed like maybe finishes were down and eye pokes were still around the same, they were like, oh well, we're going to go back to the old gloves. Maybe Jon Jones was the, final, the straw that broke the camel's back in terms of Jones was saying, maybe I want to fight in the old gloves because Jones came out and said, I don't like the new gloves. Maybe that's the case, maybe it's not, but that's very interesting The old gloves are now the new gloves moving forward. And it seems as if that Jones narrative is kind of dead now, because I doubt they switched the gloves back for Jones forever, basically. Now they're going to switch them back forever. Maybe they're going to work on the new gloves, tweak them a little bit, and then unveil them again. But very, very bizarre how they hyped up those gloves. They came out, and now they're going back on them, 5 months later? I think they unveiled them in June. Okay, now let's look at the Aspinall stuff. So the next clip we're going to take a look at is literally immediately right afterwards. They're asked Dana White, should the winner of this fight Tom Aspinall, is essentially what they asked. You'll hear it for yourself.
Okay. And last one for me. We all know that this Saturday has to take place, but for you personally, do you still want to see the winner of this fight Tom Aspinall to unify the heavyweight title?
Crowd goes wild. Crowd goes wild because that's the fight the fans want to see, love to see it. And then watch Dana's response.
Was that for me?
Yeah.
What's the question?
Do you want to see the winner fight Tom?
The winner should absolutely fight Tom.
Crowd goes wild again. The winner should absolutely fight Tom. I absolutely love the camera work here. Crowd, and then I think it goes to Jones, and then I think it goes to Stipe. Poor Stipe, man. Poor Stipe. But Jones just kind of smiling. Jones is probably thinking, I'm about to get a really, really fat bag. Maybe we'll see. Maybe, Dana can convince him. Maybe it is all negotiation tactics. Maybe partially is trolling the fan base. Maybe partially is playing mind games with Tom Aspinall. But Dana White seems hell-bent on making the fight. If you watch my video from earlier, he said, look, Jones is either retiring or fighting Tom Aspinall next. If you haven't watched that video, go check it out. It's about the interview he stormed out on. You'll see it. I'll link it actually down in the description if you care to go check it out. And there's a little bit more here.
Who's got the next question?
Knock it off.
So I believe they're chanting Tommy there. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. And Jon Jones is smiling and says, knock it off. Now, I want to kind of kill a little bit of a narrative here. I believe a lot of people going into this fight now, and especially with this kind of an odd fight week Jon Jones has had, are going to be like, yeah, Tom Aspinall's in Jon Jones' head. I really don't think it's affecting Jon Jones at all. I think he's speaking his mind. He's a little bit of a troll. He's kind of weird to begin with. And I think he kind of relishes these types of things, especially considering the fan demand of Jones versus Aspinall. Dana White kind of demanding it puts him in a very good position in terms of leverage. But where it's going to get really interesting is if Jones is ready to die on that hill and say, look, I'd rather fight Pereira. I'm here for the falling out between Jones and Dana White, which will be absolutely insane. Next clip we're going to look at is somebody asking Jones about what Dana White just said, basically. This is, later on, it's a different person. But someone asked, what do you have to say about, Dana White? And basically, your statements about who you want to fight next and Dana White's do not align. What do you make of that, basically?
Jon Jones, right here. What is your reaction to Dana saying the winner of this fight has to fight Tom, that you won't be fighting Alex if you win?
By the way, I don't think, I know a lot of people are probably like, oh, Jones is so worried about this and he's so stressed and Tom's in his head. I don't buy that at all. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't buy it at all. I think Jones is relishing this. I think he thinks it's hilarious. And I think he has a perfect response here.
I have no reaction. Right now I'm focused on Saturday. Saturday is just a few days away, and that's the biggest thing for me right now.
And then he gets some booze there, and then the guy follows up.
Absolutely no thoughts on Alex next or anything, just fully focused on Stipe?
I did a really long press conference yesterday, and I feel like I really broke it down for everybody, exactly how I felt. So tonight, it's all about Stipe.
Thank you.
This should have been his answer all fight week. Well, what about Tom Aspinall? What about Tom Aspinall? I'm focused on Stipe. What about Tom Aspinall? I'm focused on Stipe on Saturday. He should have pulled a Max Holloway. We're going to find out Saturday. That's what he should have said. We're going to find out Saturday. This was a perfect answer from Jon Jones, but it's going to be very funny if he wins this fight. And at the end of the day, he has to win this fight. If he loses to Stipe, he's going to be in a horrible position. He'll probably get the immediate rematch, and the Tom Aspinall fans' heads are going to explode. But I see a very interesting future of Jon Jones and Dana White potentially butting heads like they have in the past. But another thing I want to point out, and I've talked about it kind of, throughout this video, is it seemed like Jones was trying to make it personal. The Stipe Miocic fight personal. And I think it's because he thinks this could potentially be his last fight. And I think he kind of is slightly annoyed that the full narrative has been on the Aspinall fight instead of Jones versus Stipe, legend versus legend. And he had the comments earlier. I didn't show you those necessarily comments where he cried about Stipe calling him a bitch, and apparently the family comment, and Stipe apologized and said, I don't remember that. But then there's one other moment, and it's at the end of the press conference when they square off. Stipe looks for a handshake. I don't understand how you could even disrespect Stipe in general anyway. Stipe looks for a handshake, and Jones just says, basically, fuck you. And he says something to him. Watch this. Jones seems to have said, don't ever mention my kids again. And Stipe says, I never mentioned your kids. So I don't know where Jones is coming up with this. I feel like there has to be something. I don't think he's just pulling this out of thin air. But Stipe just seems confused this whole time. I feel bad for Stipe. He's getting shit on by the fans, getting shit on by the media, getting shit on by Jones, and getting shit on by me. And he's just here for a title shot. He's a former champion just here for a title shot. But I really think Jones is just, I feel like, and I'll play a little bit more of this. By the way, I'm sick that the UFC is sponsored by Wingstop. It's so horrible. Wingstop is horrible. But yeah, I think Jones is trying to push a little bit more of the media's focus on Jones versus Stipe, if in fact this does end up being his last fight. But I'm telling you right now, and this is kind of the whole point of this recap in general. You guys, let me know. Do you guys still enjoy these press conference recaps? They're the easiest video to do, but at the same time, we're breaking a lot of the nuanced, weird topics down, basically, the very small things. But I know, if Jones beats Stipe, Dana White's eyeballs are lighting up with money signs. It's going to be very similar with the Khabib retirement. Remember Khabib retired, I believe it was UFC 254 in October. And Dana was like, Khabib's not retired. And he kept trying to push him to fight. I can see that happening with him and Jon Jones, but them butting heads in the media more. Dana White, I remember the way he insisted that GSP would be rematching Hendricks. He acted like it was a foregone conclusion. It was a done deal. And obviously GSP ended up retiring, coming back, and then Dana was never really happy with him. I could see it. Jones is a very unique individual, a very unique personality in the UFC. And obviously Dana White is so brash and outspoken. And if Dana's not I think Jones versus Aspinall is a massive fight. I think Jones versus Pereira is even bigger. But I think at the end of the day, Dana would never want Jones to kill off Pereira and then leave the organization, which is inevitably what would happen. Because Pereira is on the come up as a star in the UFC as well, one of their biggest stars in the UFC. So Dana's going to be wanting that Jones versus Aspinall fight. And if Jones really, starts negotiating heavily and asks for, let's say he says, I want $30 million or whatever it may be, Dana's going to start trashing him a little bit in the media. And then Jon Jones is going to start tweeting and deleting. And I'm just telling you right now, I'm here for the fallout. I'm here for the Jon Jones, Dana White drama that I think could be coming. It's not going to be this Saturday. It's not going to be next week. But believe me, it's going to be coming. And even backstage after this, Dana White did a little scrum. I wish I had the clip for you, but I don't. Where he said, yeah, I think Jon Jones is definitely going to fight Tom Aspinall. So you have Dana already kind of selling wolf tickets for a Jones-Aspinall fight to put the pressure on Jones. To put the pressure on Jones to take that fight. The fan pressure's already there. Dana White's kind of, stoking the flames of that fan pressure. If Jones tells Dana, I'm not doing that, I'd rather fight Pereira, it's going to get very, very interesting after UFC 309. But if Jones loses, he's in a very bad spot because he preemptively ducked Tom Aspinall only to lose to Stipe. Now, ultimately, I think there would be a rematch, which would hold up the heavyweight division even more. But it's going to get very, very interesting very, very soon. Also, allegedly, the UFC confirmed to Ankalaev that he will be next for Pereira. So I don't know if maybe they're just hearing some of the headlines that Dana says, oh, Pereira's staying at light heavyweight. That's just going to happen at light heavyweight. And maybe they're preemptively saying that. I don't know. But can't wait for UFC 309. I know the main event isn't exactly what we wanted, but if this is the end of Jon Jones and Stipe Miocic, it's the end of an era. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel. I'll be live streaming the full card on Saturday night if you care to join me. I'll talk to you guys in the next video.